am thrilled to bring to the show today Kelly Kennedy. I want to dive in with her everything energetic and emotion. Here's the deal with Kelly. She actually started with a more allopathic approach to medicine, but then she started to have several traumatic events that made her realize that good health is more than just taking medications and undergoing surgeries. And I can relate to her so much on this front. And I think this conversation is going to be something that is going to be incredibly beneficial for you. For the last 27 years, Kelly has dedicated her life to uncovering answers to healing through alternative therapies, such as the bioregulatory machine, energy medicine, and somatic work. Kelly is commonly referred to as the Lymph Queen and is the mind behind energy flow and transformative energy flow formula, which is an approach and technique that addresses and restores your energy, your fascia, your lymph, your oxygen, and your water. She is truly a light. She is a joy to chat with. I think you're going to get so much out of this episode. So let's not delay anymore and let's get going. Introducing Kelly Kennedy. Hi, Kelly.
Tricia.
Oh my, I have been so looking forward to your interview today because as I was going through your experiences and what you do and what you're so passionate about, it 100% aligned so much with my life. And okay, if you're listening right now or watching, don't stop because I have absolutely no doubt that this episode could potentially absolutely change your life. And I mean that in the most loving and gratitude way because what you do has changed my life, even though it wasn't you doing it. So I want to open by saying that when I was a kid, I had stomach aches all the time. And I had all these symptoms throughout my life, going from stomach aches, going to, heavy menstrual cycles, acne, fatigue, trouble sleeping into my 20s, all of these symptoms. I mean, you name it, I probably had it, right? And a point in my 20s, I was like, you know what? Like, I need to take care of this. And my head was like, you can take care of this. Go see a naturopath, get on the right diet, take all the supplements, get all the testing, blah, 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 which I did. And that's great. Okay. I mean, yeah, it helped. I found myself, cleaning up my diet, taking these supplements. My symptoms got a little better. I mean, enough for me to say, okay, there's something here. But there was a point, and I think so many people hit this point where you only get so far. So you get all these improvements and then you hit the ceiling where it's like, okay, now I'm obsessive. If I venture from my diet by even one bite of anything, I have symptoms. If I don't get exactly the right amount of sleep or I don't do exactly what I've been told to do, I have symptoms. And this would happen when I would travel. I would go with my husband and we would eat out. And even though I followed my guidelines, I would get a stomach ache that would make me go back to the hotel and we couldn't go do anything. And it wasn't until I was 40, my mom was dying of cancer. She passed away. The grief that went with that compounded the adrenal fatigue I already had from powering through, from over controlling everything from my diet to my family to my practice, the grief from my dad when he died of a stroke many years earlier, the grief from my grandparents that I helped care for as they passed away and I never dealt with because I spent my whole life, in hindsight now, controlling everything, getting everything perfect, doing all these things. She passes. I crash, right? Does anyone out there relate to this? You just freaking crash. Your life, I just don't even know what to say. I just didn't even know what to do. I hated my life. I felt depressed. I was anxious. I didn't sleep. I wasn't present with my children. And something in me said, you have a choice right now. You can basically die in life, or you can try something that maybe is uncomfortable for you and change. So what did I do? I went and started doing Reiki and I started getting energy work and we started opening up all my chakras and I started getting myofascial release And I started to have these random pains that would move around my body, maybe a sore shoulder, maybe a sore hip. They would always go out of alignment. And of course, the doctors were like, well, you need to get a chiropractic adjustment. Well, you just need to clean up your diet more. And the energy healer was like, no, you're all right. Let it out. Like, we got to open this up. And I will tell you, I learned in that moment how much emotion, trauma, previous fears, thoughts, beliefs, perfectionism, this idea of control was manifesting as emotions in my body from things that I literally hadn't done. I hadn't grieved. I hadn't dealt with the anger, the sadness, the feeling of loss, the loneliness. I had this idea that I was supposed to just be a freaking superwoman and manage everything. And when I started to release all that, I could eat more. I didn't have to take as many supplements. I didn't have to take digestive enzymes anymore. My sleep was 100% resolved. I was rested. And the one thing that I did that just came to me one day, you know, like they say, when you're in alignment, things just come to you, right? And I was like, well, I'm depressed. What did I do when I was a kid? And I was like, well, I danced. I'm going to go back to dance class. And I got off my butt and I walked into a dance class, and I have been dancing since then. And that was 9 years ago. I now dance 6 hours a week. I started at 1 hour a week. I'm now at 6 hours a week. I have more joy, more flexibility, better rest, better energy. I don't get sick often. When I do, my immune system is kick-ass. And here's the thing. I see, and this is what I want to lend over to you to talk about, because I see people all day long and they do all the things they do, and they're hitting that wall. And when I suggest, hey, there might be an emotional component here that's preventing you from healing. You're holding this in your lymphatic system, in your tissues, in your fascia, in your stomach. We need to start to explore the emotional connection to these symptoms so that you can overcome them. They kind of like, yeah. So I want to turn this over to you, because this is what you freaking do. And I can only imagine the transformations you've seen in your career from looking at this. So can we talk about,
oh my gosh,
how emotion is trapped in the body so that people can understand how important this is? Because if that's one thing they walk away with today, that they have the power to completely change their health by addressing this aspect, my day will be made. I will walk off saying I have been successful today. So Kelly Kennedy,
wow.
take it. Can you take this? Run with it.
I mean, first of all, Tricia, I want to do about 400 hours worth of interviewing with you on both sides, where I get to interview you and you get to, that was magical. Everything you said, I had so many things to say, and it's so challenging for me to be quiet. And I remember our, like, getting prepared for this today, I too started to listen to you and was like, is she my sister split at birth? Like, our stories are so similar. You know, my dad had a stroke. I was at Cornell. I switched to pre-vet,
Yep.
you know, all the things, and doing all the things, working on the muscles, working on the orthorexia, making sure I do everything just so perfectly. And I couldn't control anything. And then I got a spontaneous healing. And this gentleman said, I said, how did you do this? And he said, be. Just, it's energy, be. And that was 1996. And as I listened to you today in 2025, so many things are coming up for me listening to you. Like, one is, bravo, sister. Everything that you have overcome, how much you have faced yourself, and you are an excellent communicator. And I am so pleased to be in a coaching group with you, to be able to learn from you. And one of my things was, when COVID hit, I realized I wasn't doing my job. I wasn't following my mission, because I wasn't taking this to the world. I had a tiny little office. We didn't have a sign. We were hiding. And we had been in practice for 15 years, but nobody really knew who we were unless you were in my inner circle and you knew to refer clients to us that you were stuck. And It was all because in 1996, this guy, I was in chronic pain for 3 years. I was managing my sickness, kind of like you were then managing your wellness, right? And what I saw was it was still a broken model. Like I knew the allopathic model was broken because my dad, 55, died, Hodgkin's disease, cancer 7 times. I was a collegiate rower in a car accident, compression fractures, lacerated spleen, and scalped. And I was told, manage my pain for the rest of my life.
Yeah, here's your opioid.
Get off the rowing team and you get on those painkillers and muscle relaxers right now. And you stop having joy and fun and don't climb your trees and don't play basketball anymore and don't be you, basically. And I was Irish Catholic, pissed.
Yeah.
And grief stricken. My dad had died after 2 strokes in that year. I was the last person that he spoke to.
Yeah.
And I remember him, the last thing, I'm just going with the flow. The last thing he asked me to do was let him die on the floor in our living room. And I know that seems kind of callous how I'm saying it right now, but you have to understand, I've been dealing with death since I was 7 years old. I was told
Me too. And my dad sat up from a coma after a coma of 4 days where he didn't say anything, sat up in the middle of the night after I said, Dad, I think I'm going to have to go back to school. Like, I've got to finish my organic chemistry. I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to take you off life support. Sat up in the middle of the night. The nurse told me this and yelled, go. And I came back the next day and she's like, he told you to go. You've got to go. And I was like, oh my God. And I never saw him again. Isn't that crazy? I get it, girl.
Love the universe. So last time he spoke to me was the second stroke, and he said, just let me die. And I looked down on the ground. I go, Mom will kill me if I let you die. Like that. I mean, this was not the first time I was calling the ambulance for my dad. It was not the first medical miracle he had walked away from. But then he laid in a hospital bed for 5 months. And I kept saying to him, you can go, I'll take care of Mom. And energetically, I was just like, Dad, go, Dad, go. And the first weekend, I didn't go take care of him because my 2 friends that I was in the car accident with that I almost died in 11 months before were like, Kelly, you've done nothing but go to hospitals for 11 months. You need to go back and go to a musical concert because I love to dance. And I was like, they're like, you need to go see Fish. I was a Fish head. And so we went to Fish, and that was the night my dad died.
Yeah. I won't go to hospitals. I don't like to go to hospitals now. In fact, my stepdad just died recently, and his when he would something would happen, he'd fall or whatever, he'd be in the hospital, he'd be like, why don't you come visit me? Well, how come you never come visit me? And I'm like, I don't want to be in a hospital anymore. I've been in a hospital so many times grieving and taking care of people. I don't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, there's no way I would have actually made it to be a doctor because I couldn't have handled the hospitals either. And all my friends that are medical doctors are like, you should not go to medical school. You'll just get kicked out because you are so against what they're doing. But I was managing my pain. Then I got into energy healing, and I, like you, was managing my wellness. It was like orthorexia for 10 years. Like if I was princess in the pea. I carried around my supplements, and I had my right water, and I had my shower head filter that I would take to the hotel, y'all. I mean, I was intense. And then I became aware that I wasn't well. And my clients, I got into the lymph system, I got into terrain medicine, I started to learn how the body really worked. But what happened in my story, because it's about your story and my story, I guess, today, is that I realized that my story is about getting through my story so I could tell my story to everyone else. And
sure.
even though 5 years ago, I felt like, oh, I'm finally getting out there and telling the story, I haven't been good enough to get people to understand. I know this is the medium to get the message out and to get people to wake up to realize that we are physical beings, absolutely, but we are divine beings having a physical experience, and we are emotional beings having a physical experience. We are feeling beings that think, and we have completely screwed the ratio up as brilliant, develop brain conscious human Homo sapien organisms. Yes, but we have forgotten that we are an organism that is connected to the rest of the ecosystem, that lives and eats and breathes out of fight, flight, consciously overriding, so that tiger that walks by us, whether there's 60 bears that are walking by us, as you talk about, right? Or it's in our head, all the bears of all the programming that we have of the shoulds and the woulds and the coulds and the what ifs and all the things. Or do we trust? Do we have fear, or do we trust? And that fear is that sympathetic fight flight that is our designed mechanism to help us survive. But my Lord, let's agree that 2025, most of us are not really in survival mode. We know where we're going to sleep tonight. We know where our food's going to come from. And we know that our basic needs are met. But we're in survival. A lot of us are in survival mode because we're not living in a McMansion. We don't have a cell phone, whatever it is.
I mean, but we're here. I woke up this morning, and with my experience with losing so many people, that's the number one thing I'm grateful for in my day,
Waking up
is that
right
I
away.
woke up in the morning and the sun is up, and I come downstairs and I have beautiful children. And even if they're in a bad mood, they're beautiful and they're getting their breakfast, and my husband's there and my dog says hello, and like the little things that you don't think about. And I know I talk about that a lot. People are like, okay, I get it. Our thoughts and the way that we look at the world make a difference. But what if we flipped this, Kelly? Like, obviously you and I know that what we think matters and the words we use matter, right? Because what we put out there is what our brain is putting out there. And there's changes in our brain when we live out of fear. What if speak to someone who maybe has chronic pain? Maybe they have chronic back pain and they've done everything. They've done the physical therapy, they've done the chiropractor, they've done, they're doing their workouts, they're trying to lose weight, they're doing the lab values, they're taking the supplements, but their physical pain is so bad. They're in so much pain that that's now having an impact on the way that they live their life. So even the thought of saying, hey, let's change our patterns in our brain, let's talk about it differently, they can't, because the physical pain is overriding. That program is so strong in their body, where
Oh,
their
Tricia,
muscles and their lymphatics are tight and they're not draining toxins. And it's just, where the heck do they start? How does this person make that shift to start to understand how much power they have by taking the time to control their thought and their emotions and diving into it?
there's just oh God, there's so much there to unpack, and I'm going to try to be efficient with it. Let me do
Oh,
this.
yeah, I
Let's
can break it down.
everybody do this together with me. Ready? Everybody, I invite you to take a breath with me. And then let's all exhale and sigh it out. Ugh. Tricia and I know how to engage our parasympathetic nervous system. It is the only thing we control. We can't control anything else other than our breath. And that allows us to be in the state of being, in the state of presence. The gift we all just gave each other was the state of pause, the state of rest, the state of take a moment. Because Trish and I, while we know the parasympathetic, we both like to dance. We both like have a lot of energy. And I remember dancing with her at the last event, actually, and having a lot of fun about it. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's how we really connected. Actually, it's on the dance floor. And we can get like overwhelmed in what we want to teach. And I felt the energy starting to rise, where maybe the listeners are starting to feel overwhelmed. And like you said, like, where do we start? And I was feeling like, where do you start to explain to people that we are emotional beings having a physical experience, and where to start? Yes, we start with our thoughts, but this is a mind-body connection, and you can't separate one from the other. So the work that I do is about the somatic release. What my husband does is rewire the mind, essentially, from the emotional repatterning. And what I do and my team does is help get it out of the physical body, so that those patterns that are stuck with our thought life, that are creating patterns in our physical life, that are released all at the same time. Because if you work one, not the other, they actually reinfect, if you will, the other, like a parasitic infection. And so you've got to address both. And the smallest vibration, as we are vibrations, is the most impactful, and that is our thoughts. However, the brain is more limited, whereas the heart is unlimited. And this is this concept of being. And the heart has 40 1,000 more sensory neurites than our brain does, as we know from heart math from Roland McCready. And we know from Sound of Soul and Masaru Emoto's work that if you talk to water crystals and you say beautiful words, it makes beautiful water crystals. And I get to work with a guy that worked with him for 17 years and worked around the world with him to create technology that is your sound of your heart, because we are sound and light. So it's the frequency of our heart, which is like a EKG or a heart rate variability, the measurement of that frequency in the physical, but that frequency is the energy of who you are. And that becomes demonstrated in our physical body. And as we can change our physical body, we can change that. It's a little hard to go that direction. As we can change our thought life and our emotional life, we can actually physically change the manifestation in our physical body. And this is proof that meditation is the medicine. And Dr. Hamel Patel and Joe Dispenza are proving that in the lab. And we get to prove it every day in our office. And yeah, I could go through story and story and story. And let me just tell you one. So this week, I have this woman, and she came to us 20 years. She's been on, in 1996, she was on 25 medications. She has gone from doctor to doctor, from Johns Hopkins to the Mayo Clinic. Her husband is a malpractice lawyer. Come on, you can't make that shit up. That's just funny. She has such lung issues, fatigue, asthma, just general malaise, pain, the chronic ills for 20 some years. She walks in my office. She has a mouthful of amalgam fillings. Nobody's ever mentioned that silver fillings are leaking into her body. And she's from 3 hours north of us. So she had to drive quite a bit distance to get to us. And she still has that mouthful of amalgams, but she had an edema on her arm that she's been dealing with for a long time. And I'm known as the Lymph Queen. So she found me through podcast. She found, lymph. Okay, so what? So everybody thinks lymph is about pumping the top 7, which I'm going to give to your community is the definite way to start to help begin to open up Pandora's box. But the top 7 is not where we end. It's just where we start. And we started working her lymph system. We started treating her scars. We started doing the terrain medicine that we do. And most importantly, we started to bring her to the consciousness of how her body feels instead of how she thinks.
Yep.
And how those two things are connected. So this woman has been on and off antibiotics for 20 years, multiple times a year. We met her in December. She's been sick 2 times. She didn't have to get on antibiotics either time because through the therapies, through natural medicine, through homeopathy, through lymph work and fascia work, she's been able to stay out of the hospital and out of antibiotics.
Awesome.
She did get really sick twice, so, and she got scared and she almost quit. And I warned her she was gonna, because people do, right? Then we get to the point where we got her going to the dentist. She's got the appointment set for the end of April, but we're recording this beginning of March. So now we've got 6 more weeks to buy her time. And I don't want her coming in the office wasting a bunch of money doing lymph work. If she can do some of this at home until she gets the amalgams out so that we can then spend her money good against good, right? So I'm like, just buy us some time. We'll do a Zoom consult. So I do a Zoom consult after 3 weeks not being in the office. Like, are you holding your own? How you doing? She's like, no, I'm doing great. I'm not sick, blah, blah, blah. And I want to tell you what happened Saturday. Okay, great. What happened? So she's been in a marriage for a long time. And, as it happens with a lot of women, we tend to hold our tongues. Hey, do you know anybody like that? You know anybody that, maybe was, a woman in her 30s to 50s that maybe has been in a marriage for 10 or 20 years or in society or in a job and has decided for her best interest and to move on in her life, she's been stifled her whole life, that she best just shut up and not tell her honest God's truth because she might have her tongue cut out.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So she's learned this through behavior. And we made her aware that she was holding her tension in her jaw. She was holding her tongue. She was holding her tension in her abdomen. And so we made her start to make noises as we do and get uncomfortable and dance and have a little temper tantrum. So as it would happen, as we've done those sessions 5 or 6 times now over the last few months, Saturday, her husband is having a deep emotional issue because it's a year anniversary of a death in of his best friend. And he starts to behave in a way that typically she would take it on. She would, feel bad for him. She would try to manage him. She would try to people please him. She would try to make food. You know, she'd do all the things to tippy toe around him so he felt good. And instead, she either energetically or physically put her hand up and said, no, that's not mine. That's yours.
Ah.
And it happened because she was doing pretty good throughout the week. But Saturday, something happened, and all of a sudden, she noticed her arm started to swell.
Yeah.
And she said, no, I'm not doing this. And she sat down, she pumped her lymph, she took a breath, and she did some energetic, and she watched her arm swelling reduce in front of her eyes. And I congratulated her because she made the connection between her physical body showing her a symptom of what her mental and emotional body was no longer willing to put up with. So it showed her a symptom that would drive her to take action to survive. Because as I've heard you say, it's not the acute stress that's the problem. It's the chronic stress that we are not aware of that actually drives inflammation, that causes the body to have systemic issues. And it's holding on to the patterns, the pathogens, the toxicants, and the emotional components. But 90% of us are emotional. So I don't want to be dumb. I have a really smart brain. I went to Cornell University. I learned a lot. And I learned that if somebody gave me a ratio and said, would you rather work in the 10% or would you rather work in the 90%? Which one would make a bigger impact? The 90%? I'm going to work in the place where it makes the bigger impact because I don't want to work hard and not get anywhere. And that was me and you carrying our supplements, working out, doing the things, all the red light, all the things, being rigid and and in order versus in the flow and in what I call flexitarianism. So that, yeah, I use my Flow Vibe, which is a vibrating tool to help pump my lymph, and I can pump my lymph, but I always, whether I have that tool or not, I have the one thing that I can always do to shift my nervous system. B.
Yeah. Big breath. Yep.
And get it out and go, oh, that sucked. That was uncomfortable and I didn't like it. But I'm better for it now. I've changed my comfort zone and now I'm expanded version of who I was. And now I'm more of me. Yay!
You know, it's so interesting because most of us have a best friend. And when we start getting out of line, our best friend's like, hey, like, Tricia, check it. Like, what are you doing? Right? But we very rarely realize that our body is actually our best friend. And so when things are emotionally wrong, we're going through something, our body sends us signals. And we often interpret these signals because they're annoying. They're swelling or pain or discomfort. We think something's medically wrong with us when often it's actually our body trying to say, hello, like I'm right here.
It's 100% of the time, not often. It's 100% of the time. When you have a symptom, it is the language that your body speaks to get you to pay attention. And it is not that it wants to be suppressed. It is that it wants to be heard.
It wants to be heard.
If it won't be heard, it will continue to show you worse and worse symptoms until you do pay attention. And that might be you die and come back and do this again.
Well, right. And I think, you know, it's funny when you were using your voice, you know, when I, even at the last conference, I was having a hard time releasing my voice, my throat chakra. And I grew up my entire life being told to just shut up. I was too much energy. I was too much for people. Just show up, look pretty, put on your pretty clothes, walk the runway. You be who I want you to be today. Don't, you know, you have to be size 0. You have to look like this. You are, you know, you were born this way. You better own who you are in this way, but don't do it in your own authentic way. You're going to do it how we're going to tell you how to do it, right? And my entire life, even being very vocal and being an extrovert in general, it was a trained extrovert. I was trained to be on stage. I was trained to be in front of camera. I was trained to be on the runway. It was groomed in me. I was born into it. It wasn't natural for me to be an extrovert. I was actually quite quiet when I was a kid and very observant, and watched a lot of trauma around me, watched a lot of people not handling their shit well, if I'm honest, and took that on and learned that as a behavior. And it's interesting because I have had this show in my mind for 15 years. I've sat down to start it multiple times. Never did it. I don't know why. And at the last conference, I did an exercise with our dear friend Dan, and he said, be vocal, and I couldn't. It wouldn't come out. And I could feel my heart just swelling with love and gratitude. Like my heart was like, oh, this is what I want. Give it to me. And I could not get it out. And he came over and had to put his hand over my throat. And he was like, Tricia, scream. And I let out the voice. And within a half an hour, this show was created. It was outlined. It was laid out. I started booking guests. I had everything ready to go. And it reminded me that even through all of the work that I've done to heal myself over the course, this is always an ongoing thing. You're never done. There's always things that come up as you uncover each layer. You know, I look at the body like an onion. It's like you got all these layers and you peel one off and then you got the next one and then you got the next one. So if you're listening and you feel like you've been peeling layers, but you're either getting worse or you're in the same place,
you're stuck.
To listen to this over and over again. You are stuck because you're not connecting with your body. You are in your head and not in your heart. Find your heart. And my heart had been hurt by so much loss. And so every time I would connect with who I wanted to be, I would cry uncontrollably. And so that's what would stop me. I'd be like, oh, crap, well, I can't start this show. I'm a freaking emotional mess. What am I going to do? But I didn't. Intellectually, I connected the chakras, but physically I hadn't yet. And I had to get to that point to do that. And that comes with practice. And this, even though this concept that you're talking about is simple, it doesn't mean it's easy. And I know Dr. Joe Dispenza says that all the time. He's like, you know, you wake up and you have your gratitude statements and you take your deep breaths, and it's simple, but it's not easy because your old self is going to fight with your future self when what we really need to be doing is living in the present self and setting ourselves up for the future that we want, the future that we are fully capable of having, whatever that is. And this social media and other people's opinions, I used to let that get me. And now I'm like, well, it's kind of like Mel Robbins' theory, let them. I'm like, oh, let them think that. It has no bearing on me or what I'm putting out in the world. And it's getting harder and harder to start this gratitude practice because we have so many external patterns. And it is becoming physical pain and physical restrictions, right? And changes in blood sugar and changes in heart health. And, you know, and I think the work that you do with the lymphatic system is so, so important. So many people ask me, what is the lymphatic system? People don't even know because you don't deal with that in allopathic. There's no lymph doctor you go to, right?
Even
you don't
have a massage therapist. I mean, I finally got trained as a massage therapist because I was touching so many bodies, honestly. I was like, I should probably get licensed to touch bodies. So I went and got my license, and I was so excited because I'm an anatomy physiology geek. So I was like, yeah, I'll go back to school and take anatomy physiology all over. Yeah. And I was so excited for the lymph chapter, and it was 4 pages. And every other system was 25, 35 pages. And I'm like, no, can I teach the lymph system? Because the lymph, you all, it's part of your circulatory system. And we have between 600 and 1,000 lymph nodes in our body.
It's insane.
600 and 1,000 lymph nodes. You also have lymph vessels that connect all those nodes. The nodes are deeply concentrated in our neck and our gut. 50% of your lymph is in your gut. You got gut issues, you got lymph issues. You got thyroid issues, you got lymph issues. You got tonsil issues, you got lymph issues. Because tonsils are part of your organ system that's related to your lymph, along with your small intestines, your Peyer's patches, along with your appendix, along with your spleen, along with your thymus gland, along with your bone marrow. Why? Because your immune system isn't just about taking out your trash and your pathogens and your toxicants, which it is. It's also about your fluid balance. It is about your immune relationship, because at the level of the lymph nodes, when the fluid that's circulating throughout your body, the spaces between the cells is the interstitial space, is the fluid part of your body, the water part of your body, as well as there's water inside the cell. But the majority of your body, 2/3 of your body is lymphatic fluid and 1/3 is blood. Hello? Again, am I going to work in the majority or the minority? I'm going to work in the majority, please. I get a bigger impact there. I'm not great at math, but I understand ratios. So as I work on this lymph and we open up this drainage, when the fluid gets to the lymph node is when it identifies, is this a pathogen, a toxicant, emotional, like what is this? And do I need to then elicit a white blood cell to address this thing so that then when this lymph, which ends right here at the top of my clavicle, drains, not drains into my heart, into my cardiovascular system. It circulates it through my heart and my lungs. And I'm going to hear these words, detox more through my lungs by exhaling than I ever will from my liver, my kidneys, or my sweat glands. My lymphatics, because I will exhale out more toxicants. The lungs are the largest organs in the whole body, and we are more air, and we're becoming more and more air as we continue to evolve in this world as divine beings having physical experience. So this lymph system is our immune system, it's our fluid balance, it's our trash taker outer, it is the water of the body. I know we all know that the moon affects the tide, the moon and the sun affects the water. You're water, you're 90% water, and all the frequency affects us. And we are moody and emotional water beings that learn now in this day and age that it's okay to be heard, it's okay to be expressive, and it's okay to be your authentic self. And actually, now that we're in the age of Aquarian, it is more than okay, it is the preferred. To be authentic, to be genuine, to be you, your unique self, because we are all stardust having a physical experience, and that frequency of who we are is having this experience to be expressive. And it's like we've forgotten, and everybody wants to be a zombie and be just like everybody else. And I think back to Sesame Street, and I never liked it. And I always really hate that she went like, which one doesn't belong?
I know.
What the heck? That was the programming, y'all. Which one doesn't belong? I said to my husband last night, he was like, it was so funny. I've been with him for 27 years, married 14, clinical practice for 19. He was my original practitioner. He was the guy that said it's energy, and his name's Ian. Come on, that's good joke.
I know, I love it.
Funny. And what he said was be. And it's like you said, it's not simple. It's simple rather, but it's not easy. Because when he said be, I didn't know what he meant. It took 27 years since he said that to me for me to be able to tell you a little bit about what that means on a scientific level and help you understand how that relates to your physiology and how being affects your regulation, your physiology. But none of us are normal. Can we get that word out of our dictionary? Because normal is a cycle on a washing machine, but be natural, right? Are you normal, Tricia? Dancing.
The most abnormal thing.
Exactly.
And I love being odd.
Me too.
But I didn't.
So are you.
I didn't for a very long time. And
shamed.
I grew up in a very weird world. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's just a very weird world. And where you were the odd one. You were the 6 foot tall 12-year-old on the cover of a magazine. You were the one that nobody is. You're nobody can understand you. And that's a sad thing as a kid to hear, because as I realize how unique and different I am and how unique and different everyone is, I've just come to have so much love and gratitude for how different we all are. I wanted to say, when we were talking about lymphatics, obviously how important they are and how the traditional allopathic model doesn't recognize it. My mom actually passed, she had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and was diagnosed when she was in her 50s. And I remember I was in med school. I was still learning, I don't have regrets for where I was at the time. I just was at the time. I didn't have a lot of information at the time. But they said, well, it's a watch and wait scenario. Your lymph nodes will start to swell within 5 years. And that's when we'll start to have to do chemo and things like that. But it's not responsive to chemo. But that's what we're going to do when it happens. And I remember I was still in school, so I wasn't her physician, but I said, this doesn't seem right. Because I asked him, I said, okay, well, what can we do to support the lymphatic system? And they said, oh, no. Do not support the lymphatic system. You'll spread this cancer so fast if you support the lymphatic system. And I said, well, wait a minute. Is this genetic or toxin? Well, they did the genetic test. It was not a genetic cancer. It was toxin. My mom was one that hated weeds. She hated weeds more than anything in the world. And she would go out every weekend and she would spray Roundup in her backyard, like literally every weekend. My mom was a model, a professional model. She put hair dye on her head
No
every
fat on
single
her
week.
body.
Okay. So
So
she
all
did
her
hair dye.
glyphosate went to her brain because that, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. So, and when I did her genetic testing, she had an inability to break down benzene efficiently. And benzene exposure is one of the top reasons why someone would develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So in my mind, as a student, I was saying, well, wait a minute. If she's got a toxicity, shouldn't we get that out of her body? Shouldn't we be spending this time when she's asymptomatic? Because she found it randomly. She was just, taking a shower and was like, oh, I have a swollen lymph node, and went and got it evaluated. And within a week, we were in for surgery. She was told, you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The surgeon literally walks out of the room. He's like, sorry, you have cancer. Take care. And he leaves. And we're like, wait, what? Right. No symptoms other than that. And so I went against the oncologist. I said, we're going to start looking at how can we optimize your sympathetic nervous system? Because she was a very type A, always on edge type person. Growing up she was a very well-known model. She grew up in an era of girls just stay quiet and look pretty. And, and so we started to work on some of that, and we started doing a lot of
tighter and tighter, making your lymph more and more constricted.
100%. And worked on moving, herbs and nutrition and exercise and things like that to start moving the lymphatic system. No symptoms. 13 years before she had a lymph node start to grow in her gut. And they jumped right in, started her on immune therapy, started her on chemo. And I said, well, what agent are you using? And I look it up, and it's a benzene type chemo. And I said, we can't do this chemo. It's a benzene. She doesn't have that gene. And they said, ignored. And 6 months later, she went down real fast, but 6 months later, the lymphoma was gone, but she had full-on brain cancer, full metastatic brain cancer, sepsis, died of sepsis from chemo. And going from someone who was very vibrant and had a full life. And so I wanted to ask you, this idea that when you have a lymphatic issue, that you shouldn't do anything about it. Has that changed at all? Because this was 9 years ago, or is that still a foreign concept? Is lymphatic still ignored?
5 years ago, when I went and opened a podcast because I felt like I hadn't been doing my job and COVID hit, I said, people don't understand their immune system. They're going for a shot and a mask that has nothing to do with your immune system. It's about not the germ, it's about the terrain. Yeah. And I've been studying in Europe at that point for 15 years. And 5 years later, I'm here to tell you, there's now quite a few people talking about lymphatics. And I'm grateful to so many people for bringing me on their shows and their summits and their podcasts. And Dr. Christine Schaffner talks about it, as well as Sinclair Canelli. Mm-hmm. And all three of us have always talked about lymphatics because we do train medicine. But in America, no. Yeah. It hasn't changed. When in 1996, when my dad had died in 93, in 96, when I was introduced to this medicine, I had a spontaneous healing. It took 8 years for me to really be introduced to trained medicine and understand the science behind the energy. And it was Dr. Thomas Rao, who's teaching right now in Switzerland to many of my doctor friends, stood in front of a room and said, cancer is the answer. And I was like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. Hold on. I've been looking for this solution to cancer because my father had Hodgkin's disease 7 times. He had cancer, and I was scared to death I was going to get it. Nobody could tell me how to not get it. And just like COVID, how do you not get it? How do you not die from it? And how do you prevent it? Nobody could tell me. So I was like, I'll become a doctor and figure it out. And then I almost died in the car accident. And then he died. And then I was like, wait, they don't have this figured out. And so I went around vet medicine and was like, okay, got my very expensive degree, didn't know how I was going to use it, and then was introduced to energetic medicine through water filtration company. God love us. And through that, he said B, right? And now here I am. And in Europe, when Dr. Rao stood there and said, cancer is the answer, and then he pulled up a live blood and showed us what the blood looked like inside the body in the interstitial spaces. And he said, see all this space? This is your lymphatic system, and there's energy running through your body. And where there's cancer is where there's a lack of energy. And the body's just trying to get energy to an area where it's void. And so the cancer is the answer to the body to bring energy, because you're an energetic being. And it doesn't matter if it's cell degeneration turnover, it just needs to have energy because it can't have a void. And this space, this lymphatic fluid, is how you get all the stuff out, how you get the immune. And I was like, oh, then we do lymphatic system. And they go, yes, if you have cancer, the first thing you do is lymphatic movements and colonics. And then we build you up with IVs of vitamin C and minerals, and we open up your terrain, and we give you tons of nutrition, and we get you outside, and we find passion and joy, and we find what makes you move. And you come to America. And I have a friend right now. On January 4th, he was leaving this country for 4 years at 6 years old with his wife, my best friend of 27 years. Mm-hmm. And on January 2nd, he went into Cooper Hospital with shortness of breath. 3 weeks later, he had an open heart surgery where they took off a 6.5 centimeter sarcoma that they've only seen 4 times ever at Cooper, and 4 of them have been in the last 2 months. My friend is facing a 3 to 6 month sentence. If he gets chemo, maybe they can give him 2 years and radiate his heart. Yeah. I tried to get that. I mean, lymph is the answer, but they're not going to do that, right? And here's the other thing. He's got a broken heart from a kid thing. He's got to ideally take the money you've busted your ass to make, go walk, drink water, have amazing love with your beautiful wife that you love so much, who's a rock star, and go out and love your life and enjoy your life and walk it off. And if you were to die, so what? But the chemo and radiation isn't going to help you. Yeah. We know that. And with these fast, aggressive, and moving cancers, it's because we're not connected to our emotional heart. We're not connected to this lymphatic area, this emotional, the fascia, the energy flow of the body, energy, fascia, lymph, oxygen, and water, which is my formula, to open up and release and feel so you can heal, so you can trust that beautiful innate wisdom of which we are, that's in the center of our hearts, that communicates with every living, breathing being, and is a magnetic field to pull in the harmony into our lives. And as you and I have demonstrated, it gets easier, it gets better, it's more fun, it's more graceful, and you keep getting better and better at being uncomfortable. I broke my elbow last year falling on ice on January 19th, the day that Pluto went into Aquarius, 3 days before I turned 50. The joke is that I said I wanted to learn to do a handstand and a cartwheel for the first time in my life in my 50s. And on December 31st, on New Year's Eve, I asked the universe, this quantum thing, we're supposed to go faster, to go slower. How do we do that? How do I slow down? Because I'm a fast energizer bunny. I would love to slow down. How do I slow down and go faster? And 19 days later, I broke my elbow on black ice when I was supposed to fly to Florida, but instead we got a nor'easter and we were grounded, all the planes, and so we made the best of it. And then I took the dog for a walk and fell on black ice. And it was the hardest year of my life on many levels because I was in pain. I was told I had to have surgery. The only way to fix my elbow was surgery. And I said, that's not true. And I didn't have surgery. And I have a great elbow and a great shoulder and full range of motion. And yet I lived in pain for 6 months nonstop. I also dislocated my shoulder and 6 ribs. So it was a rough year. And I was able, though, to put into action all the things that I've learned. And what I came to realize is just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I was leaking energy from my body in so many ways because I was still the caretaker for my friends, for my family. I wasn't willing to put the mirror up and go, that's not mine.
Yeah.
I am here to not just give you the philosophy, but to give you the practical steps and to evidently show you that we are energy beings having a physical experience and that this is so much easier than you think. You just have to get over yourself. You got to face yourself and you got to get goofy and silly and be willing to be goofy and silly because nobody's looking at you anyway. But you got to start to look at yourself, be fun, and have more enjoyment. And there are simple ways to do that. And I teach that in my membership. I teach that on my podcast. I'm going to give that to your community so they can learn how to do manual lymph drainage. But please know that the top 15 is just the start. And I have written a book. You can read the book. I have like 3-day or 3-week mini courses. Like there's all sorts of ways to dive into this wherever you're at. Just know that lymph is in the beginning, lymph is in the middle, and lymph is at the end, because we're always going to live in a soup of toxins that are full of stress and emotions. And we have to learn how to stop, put the hand up and go, that's not mine. And the swelling will go down. Now, this is not medical advice. Look to your doctor, all the things, because we live in a litigious society, all the things. And here's what I'm here to tell you. You're your own physician and your own pharmacist. It's all inside you. You got nothing outside of you need to heal. It's all inside of you. And we can prove this now with science. And that's what I do on my forum, because this simple thing that we're talking about, which isn't easy, is a little bit more than pump your 7 lymph nodes and go, ha, 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 and you're fine.
Yeah.
It really takes a little learning. And so we've created this forum to teach people how to do that, to hold you, to teach you how to do that. Or if you're more of a DIY, or you want to come in and do an immersive program and lay on my table and everyone else's, we call it sleeping around your wellness, and get into the parasympathetic and have temper tantrums, essentially passive temper, facilitated temper tantrums, to teach you how to feel. And then once you're connected, you've graduated and you're on your own. And as much as you need us, we're here. But that's my business model.
I love it.
We have a lot of millions, billions of people on the planet, and one half of 1% knows this information, that your emotional being have a physical experience. So we've got some practice to do, ladies and gentlemen. We have some opportunity to help each other, collaborate, hold each other, and remember that that's why we're here. And if COVID didn't teach us anything, it taught us how important community is, how we are not alone.
Community is key, and that's why we're here, and that's why I have you here, and that's the whole purpose of what we do. And this has been such a powerful episode, and I really hope that everyone has walked away with the understanding of how much power we have by just trusting our body and working with our body and seeking out people such as yourself. And I'm going to put all of your stuff below in the show notes, because you are giving away an amazing gift. I have your website, I have your social media handles, everything. And I want all of you to follow Kelly and learn more about your lymphatic system. Learn more about maybe why that pain isn't going away. Be open-minded. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't cost anything to be open-minded. It costs nothing. All it is just learning. Learn, decide for yourself, see if it's something for you. But I just want to thank you. I'm so grateful for you, Kelly. I'm so grateful for your energy and your story, and just you taking time out of your day to be here and dive into a topic that people don't talk about.
Well, and ditto, sister, like equally just grateful to you for being you, being the light that you are, writing the book, getting this message out there. I mean, I know way more people have read it than over 60,000 now, but I just am so impressed with who you are and so grateful to have connected with you and to dance with you. And I look forward to dancing with you more. And I look forward to having you on our community so that they can learn the importance of stress and the importance of not managing stress, but reframe, right? Because it's all about a reframe. So I appreciate the work you do. And I was there in that class with Dan. Mm-hmm. And I remember that experience. And that was your moment of surrender. And and I heard him help and facilitate so many of you, and it was so beautiful what he created in that space and what you all gave into it. It magnified my experience, and I watch you just elevate more into this experience and use that beautiful throat chakra and speak your truth. And I know how impactful that is to the world. And keep going, sister. I'm so grateful for what you're doing, because it is, as you said, it's just not talked about enough. Stress as well, it's the biggest factor. And I love you for doing this, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak to your community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now go be with your family. Go be.
Go be. Yeah, I'm so excited to be with my kid. Love
And
you.
so much love to you. Thank you, hon.